My name's Neil Steele and I sing for an old school band called Tyrant. The band formed in March 1983, seems like a fucking lifetime ago, because there was no genuine metal bands in Hobart back in 1983. There were bands that were playing AC/DC, Angels and Rose Tattoo and some of that, Cold Chisel and stuff like that, but there was no bands playing all the new wave of British heavy metal stuff that was happening at the time.
Like Tyrant's a classic heavy metal band from like the early 80s. They just did like punch and rock and stuff from what I could hear.
I think I only know the singer Neil, and he's part of the furniture at the pubs. You know, he's always there. Just sits there in his beanie, gives you a thumbs up as you walk by and stuff like that. But yeah, they did really well, doing really well all over Australia in the 80s.
Initially, Tyrant released a 4-track cassette we recorded back in the day. I know it's a cliche term, but it is. In 1984. It was produced by a guy called Tim Partridge, who's still alive today, touch wood, who played back in the 70s in a band called Kevin Borich Express, which was a 3-piece hard rock band, sort of along the lines of Canadian Triumph, maybe a little bit of Rods, but not as heavy. Rods are a bit metal, but they're sort of like a blues hard rock band with a slide player, great guitar player. So that's Partridge. I knew him from when I lived in Sydney. So he did the cassette for a bottle of whiskey, which is no bullshit. We put it out as a cassette. It went to #1 here because of the radio, an FM station played the song and the band was around playing, so we sort of had a following. The TV station at the time, TVT6, which is now Win TV or whatever, Southern Cross, I don't know, whatever they are, they came and filmed us playing live at the Red Line Hotel in Hobart, which is now the Woolshed. And we did Thunder and Steel. They put it on telly. 2 months later, we played the City Hall to 2,000 fucking kids with 2 or 3 other bands. So TV worked for us. It got us big and successful enough here where we could play Hobart, Launceston, excuse me, Devonport and Burnie and actually make money. Hence, we went to Sydney in 1985 and played there for a couple of years. Got rave reviews, played some big gigs there, one at Salinas, which was 1,800 fucking people. It was us and 4 other bands. And it's just weird how fucking things, and then we just stopped because of the fact we couldn't get a deal. We had rave reviews, everyone was loved us, we packed rooms in Sydney, but we couldn't get a record deal, so the band broke up. So when we formed, later on, reformed, beg your pardon, we put Freaks of Nature out as an album in 2000, then we put out Thunder Down Under in 2003, then the band broke up again. I moved back to Tassie, got some new players, and we put out a live EP in 2005. And then we did Save the Devil in 2010. Then we did the special edition of that in 2012, which was basically just remixed and mastered. The original one was just like a demo. And yeah, so we've put out we put out the 30th anniversary EP, the original cassette that we did back in the 80s. We re-recorded those 4 same songs, and it's a double 8-track CD, and it's just sold out. So it's a collector's item. So, and look, speaking to the original guitar player, Andrew Zarens, who was the main songwriter in Tyrant with myself, we're going to look at do a new album probably in the next 12 months. We've already been talking about it, and in fact he's coming down to play a gig in a couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So that's the one band, and I have another band that I put together with my brother when I moved back to Tasmania in 2005. 2006 we put a band together called Roadkill, which is just sort of like a hard rock band, sort of hard rock band, but it also had a little bit of metal because my brother's younger than me, so he's into some of the stuff I'm into, but he's also into bands like Pantera, and more 90s stuff because he's a decade younger than me, so he's into that sort of style as well. So we had a little bit of that. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a true story. When I lived in Sydney back in, when I was living in Sydney before I came back in '83 to form Tyrant, I was living in Sydney, and Iron Maiden toured Australia. It was just after the release Number of the Beast, and a certain member of the band, right, we went to the gig, and the band that supported was the Australian hard rock band called Heaven. So because of people I knew, I went along to this, got invited to this place called, and it was like a little boutique bar called Benny's in King's Cross, and that's where this after party was for Iron Maiden. Anyway, one particular member, because I'm not going to say, he was just after a particular white substance all night, and well, he eventually got some. I know that not from me, from someone else that was obviously had some of this white substance, coke I'm talking about, obviously. And it's just one of the things I remember of this one person. This, like I said, he's in the band. I'm not going to say who it is, but he was very interested in cocaine all night. But that's all right. I mean, it's part and parcel of it. I also heard that same one person had problem doing a song a couple of albums later, and I can't say what instrument he plays because then I had to give it away, but basically this person had problem nailing his part, shall we say, right, on that particular album. He went into the studio with the producer, line of coke, bang, nailed it, one take. And that's a true story. And the song is Aces High, right? So that pretty much tells you it could be anybody, yeah? But anyway, that's a true story. I have to swear to God that's a true story. It's what happened. Okay. Just with this place in Sydney called the Mansell Room. It was sort of around from the 70s, and in the 80s I think it changed its name to Springfields, but it was like the cool venue in Sydney for all the rock stars, I suppose you could call them, musos, roadies, hookers, TV personalities, and visiting celebrities. A couple of times, I used to go there quite regularly over it, I don't know, as long as I lived in Sydney and it was open. I think it was 15, 16 years, whatever. And some of the celebrities, I actually saw Tom Cruise in there one night. I actually saw Glenn Tipton and KK Downing, but of course this is when Priest had never toured Australia, but they used to come to Australia and go marlin fishing up off the North Queensland coast, and they'd happen to be there, and there's other people. But this room was really good, the Mansell Room. One of the best pubs I've ever seen. It was a venue. It's not really a pub, but lots of bands played there. I mean, you name the bands, even international bands like the Almighty, they played there. Canned Heat. I mean, I know that's old school, sort of like grandpa rock, but I mean, there's lots of big bands that played there. Rose Tattoo. Me and Tyrant played there a couple of times when we were based there. Boss and all sorts of different style bands. They weren't just like hard rock bands. The Poor played, who ended up when they first started as the Poor Boys in the 90s. Screaming Jets, Baby Animals, all those bands. Judge Mercy, all those bands in the 90s. Horsehead, all those sort of bands played at this place. It was just one of those cool rooms, and the amount of good stories you could hear in that place is like, it was. I've never seen a room like it anywhere else in the world. But that I've been doing, like overseas in Malaysia and Japan. There's some cool places in Japan too, but just as a room, awesome bands to see, good for pickup, everything. There wasn't one negative thing I could think about it in all the time that I went there. The Mansell Room, and old people will know exactly what I'm talking about. So I got another story for you. When I lived in Sydney, we got to play with lots of different bands and support heaps of people that we liked and idolised and blah blah blah. We got to meet the guys from Rose Tattoo. I mean, I'd known them as a social thing since the 70s when I used to see them, but we never actually got to play with them until obviously Tyrant moved to Sydney in '85. But towards, I think it was, it must have been around about the 2000, between 2000 to 2003, we played with Rose Tattoo a couple of times. We got to meet Angry on a social level. I got up one night with Pete Wells' band, I think it was a New Year's Eve in Sydney, and I did a couple of Rose Tattoo songs, which was pretty cool. Get up there with your idol and stuff. But the Tats were really cool. Tyrant played with them a few times. We didn't get too many Sydney gigs, unfortunately. They seemed to like us outside of Sydney. Hey, it's dog eat dog competition, whatever, and just the way it goes. That's rock and roll, as I say. The Tats were great, but through them we met this guy called Greg Van Woolsen, who was a hard rock fan, a friend of Angry Anderson's. They used to go to the gym together and all that stuff. And who would think years later, Greg did a clip for us back like a decade ago called Perfect World on our Thunder Down Under album. A decade later, the guy is a stunt coordinator and also appears in the latest Mad Max Fury Road movie. And I mean, this guy, just a friend of Angry's, friend of me, and just amazing. This guy's gone from just being a little film director, like mucking around and doing video clips for bands and stuff. There's actually some footage. He did this little short film and stars Angry, I'm in it, and all these other people, but of course it's never made the light of days. It was supposed to be going to be put up for one of these Trop Fest things. So that's there. So I actually don't have a copy. I wish I did. I'd put it up on YouTube. So that's another story about. But the Tats, there's heaps of good things we could tell you about the Tats. Great people. I mean, I know 2 or 3 of them are dead now, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, when we got to know them, they were good people. Just people playing music. Pete Wells, remember saying, we talked about Guns N' Roses and stuff. He said, I love Guns N' Roses. I keep getting checks for Nice Boys. So yeah, I just thought it was pretty funny. To me, they're they're one of the best bands this country's produced next to AC/DC and Angels for that style, old school hard rock. The Tats in that first couple of years from 78 through to 81, they were formidable live. They just there's no one I've seen next to AC/DC with Bon Scott, probably the Scottish band called The Almighty, and bands like Slayer. There's a few hard rock in it. Those sort of bands that have that intensity when you see them, it's like it just fucking blows you away. Yeah, Rose Tattoo were very much like that in their peak, but hey, that's any band. It's a story that's sort of like has a lot of things in it, but when Tyrant was here in about 83, 84, we just had a residency up at the north of Tasmania and some people call it the capital city, but Hobart really is, Launceston, up in north. They have that sort of different attitude to us. But anyway, he had this venues up there called the California Hotel, which of course we all used to joke about because of the Eagles Hotel California. Nothing like the one in LA, let me tell you. It was run by the Satan's Riders Motorcycle Club. And look, they treated us fine, gave us food, accommodation for the night. Obviously didn't go near any of the women. You just brought your own up from Hobart, which is a lot safer. And we played there for, I don't know, I think we used to do a residency there every couple of weeks or something. We played there for, it was X amount of months. Anyway, they had a sound guy, and the sound guy's name was Clarkey. And Clarkey ended up moving to the mainland some years later, and we worked with, like, you name the bands, whether it be Rose Tattoo, Angels, Baby Animals, all those bands, The Poor, everyone. He worked with everyone, Billy Thorpe. And it's funny because he started out playing in a little, well, not playing it, doing sound in a little pub in Launceston in Tasmania. Ended up being, he only passed away in the last few years himself. All these old rock and roll guys, I know, they're all, as you get older, everyone does pass away, but it's just like amazing. He's a great sound man, great person, and he started in Tassie. It's like, he became one of the best known sound guys, definitely in Sydney. I remember Clarkey doing so many mixes for so many different bands over the years. Cool guy. There's a cool Tassie story for you. I don't know if the hotel's still there. I don't know if the Satan Riders Motorcycle Clubs are still here 30 years later. I have no idea. So another little story. But we can be here all night.